Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shenanigans Show. Now, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, we're taking a look at my 2025 reading statistics. And I know I did the end of the year book tag, which is linked down below in the description, but I figured take a look at the individual reading stats. And I know this is like a little over a month late, but hey, my channel and I rolls. And plus, it's kind of fun now that we're a month into 2026. It's kind of fun, interesting to take a look at 2025's reading stats. I will say, I mentioned this down below in the description. I have not recorded this in 2026. I recorded it like, what day is today? It's the 28th of December. So like we're pretty much right on the cusp of 2025 being over. And since it's over, I figured we were close enough to the end of the year. I was close enough to the end of the year to do this. So I do have 2 books on my currently reading pile. That's, one moment while I slightly adjust angle. I do have 2 books on my currently reading pile that I do own. So once those factor in, I'll mention it again when I get to the own versus unowned. Those will factor in as well. One of them is historical fiction romance, and then the other is like fantasy romance. So anyway, as you also saw with the disclaimers, this is not my usual posting schedule. I'm usually posting every Friday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. And once February finishes up, I will return to that unless there's a better day that works out for posting with views and stuff. But the plan is to return back to my usual posting schedule once February finishes up. So with all that said, we're going to get into this. And I'm going to show you the individual statistics that I've screenshotted before I go through them myself. So with all of those through, again, like I didn't want to just look through them myself. I wanted you to be able to see them as well. But with the recording and editing setup that I have, I'm still doing everything on my phone right now. With that into consideration, like I'm kind of limited with what I can show and how I can show it. Which is why, like, again, I still wanted to show the statistics, but I'm kind of limited with how I can do that. So that's why I showed them before I got into them. So with all that said, getting into it, my average time was 12 days, which kind of makes sense. That may change if I finish, that may change by like a day or two if I finish one of the books between now and the 31st. So I don't expect that to change though. And then moods, I'm not surprised by this. About maybe like 42-ish, 41, 42 were adventurous. That was my most. I wonder how it does this. Like the moods statistics. It seems to be what you personally enter in for the books when you're doing a review. But like that's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting from this, from like the mood chart. So that's what I think it is, based on like what you put in when you're doing a review on the StoryGraph app. So that's what I'm gonna go with, and this makes sense. So the moods in order from least, the most books to least books: adventurous, emotional, mysterious, dark, lighthearted. Kind of funny I didn't write as my lighthearted. But the thing is, with this, I wonder, like, if they do it based off of what you input, like if you're putting in a book for multiple things, like does that book go into the multiple moods to factor into that specific mood statistic? That's what I wonder. I think that's where I'm a little bit caught up on, but again, it's not a huge deal. So again, in order from most to least books: adventurous, emotional, mysterious, dark, lighthearted, tense, funny, informative, reflective, hopeful, sad, challenging, inspiring, and relaxing. And then pace wise, slow was my smallest amount at 10%. And then fast was 26%, so about a quarter. And then medium was 64%. So again, those all make sense. Sometimes, again, this is where I'm like, okay, do they input it based on what you put in, or what at the averages for that specific book? Because if it's what you put in, I put in a lot as like medium or fast. And I would expect slow to be much smaller than 10. It is small in comparison to the other two, but I would expect it to be smaller if it's what I put in for specific books. So that's where I'm like, I don't know how they do this. I would assume it's based on the average of what people have put in for the book and not what you put it in, but then that's like, if it's based on like the average, then that's when, for like the moods, it's like, is it consistently like the same thing for each statistic? That's more subjective, you know? Because if you look at like the next statistic, which is page number, that's not subjective. So it's like, for pace and for moods and for other subjective ones, it's like, do they go based on the average or what you put in? I'm gonna guess based on the thing is like, is it consistent first off, and what is it based off to? So the next one is a page number. This all makes sense. I had 8% of my books that were over 500 pages. A little over half, 52%, were 300 to 499, and then 40% were under 300. So that makes sense. And I'm not surprised that 300 was, or that less than 300 was such a big chunk, because of the manga and graphic novels that I have and a lot of the smaller books that I have. So I'm not surprised by these statistics. Next up is audiobook length. I did a lot of audiobooks. Again, this is not a statistic that I'm surprised by. I'm looking down at my computer at the statistic. 16% of books were over 16 hours. Less than 8 hours was 11%. So 11% of my audiobook reading was under 8 hours. And then 74%, so just about 3/4 of it, was 8 hours to 15 hours and 59 minutes. So this makes sense considering everything. And then the next one is fiction versus nonfiction. I didn't read as much nonfiction this year. I haven't been reading as much nonfiction lately, which I need to do better about, but 11% not bad. 89% fiction. It makes sense. These make sense. I could do better with the nonfiction stuff considering how much nonfiction I used to read, but I don't put any pressure on myself to read specifically one thing or the other. Like, I go based on what I'm interested in, what's calling to me, and just vibes. I am a proponent of reading as much nonfiction as you can, and knowing as much as possible. Like, I was watching a video recently. You know, I stepped away and I know what my sentence was. I had to step away from it and I know what I was starting to say. I was watching a video recently and I know what video I was referencing. I just don't remember what I was saying. Or what I was going to say. But I think we need to like act. I think there needs to be conscious, active effort to know more. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was watching a video recently where because of social media, we're constantly bombarded with information that we're not used to getting. Like, we're not used to having access to so much information all the time, 24/7. So I do think when we're reading, and especially when we're reading nonfiction, it's okay to be selective with what you read, but I do think we need to be conscious in what we're reading and knowing how to research stuff, knowing how to look into stuff, and making sure we're well informed and fully rounded with being well informed. So again, like, my nonfiction is not bad. My nonfiction to fiction ratio, not bad. I could be better about it, but I'm not mad at it. So the next one, genres, not surprised, but fantasy and romance are top, and then historical's pretty close. Like, the top 5, fantasy, romance, not as one genre, 2 separate genres, fantasy and romance, and then historical, LGBTQIA+, and then mystery. Oh, well, I'm gonna count that as like top 4 since LGBTQIA+ and mystery are tied, so like manga would make it in there too, as well as classics. So I did pretty good with. Okay, I had to step away for a moment, but I am happy that I was delving into other genres that I usually don't read. But I mean, could they be better? Yes, but I feel like we all have our things that we gravitate towards and that we're comfortable with, so I'm not mad at it. There are definitely things that I feel like could be boosted up a little bit, but again, we all have our comfort stuff, we all have our things that we're used to, so it's like I'm not mad at the genre statistics. Next one is format. Not surprised. Again, I am trying to utilize my local library more, so utilizing Libby and Hoopla, and that means doing more digital and audio. I'm not mad at the audio one. I'm not mad at the digital one. Digital is 4%, audio is 27%, and print is 69%. And I have been utilizing my local library, the physical location. So, so these all make sense. Digital makes sense at only 4% because of the fact that I haven't lately, like the past year-ish, or maybe a little over a year, I haven't been super keen on ebooks, the digital portion in here. And nothing against ebooks. I'm a proponent for reading whatever format you please, reading whatever format is most convenient and comfortable for you. It's just, for whatever reason, the past year-ish, I haven't been super fond of ebooks myself, so I try to do audiobooks when I can and just go with my local library physical location for library books. The next one is most read authors. These make sense. Mojang Tongju at 6 books. That should probably become 7 by the end of the year, within the next couple of days, because I'm almost done with volume 7 of Heaven Official's Blessing. I did take a slow down break from reading for a little bit, because just things have been so crazy, first off, and second off, I've been trying to finish a couple of crochet projects. You can see one of them right here that I'm working on. So it's like my focus has been on the crocheting aspect, so I need to figure out how to balance it out better. But Tolkien is at 6 books. Wait, oh, Mojang Tongju is at 7 books? Oh, I know why she's at 7. It's 6 books for Heaven Official's Blessing, and then the 7th is Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation Volume 1. So it should be up to like 8 by the time, hopefully within the next couple days. John Gwynn is at 3 books. Elizabeth Lim is at 3. Clamp is at 3. Takahashi Takashi Shina. Who's that one? 2. No, it wasn't that. I'm not sure who that was. Ryoko Kui, P. Jelly Clark, 2. Takashi Shina is 3. Maybe that was the Apothecary Diaries. I'm not sure. I'll look through. And then P. Jelly Clark, I think that was 2. I think that was a Jin in Cairo, and then one other book, which it was the one with the, let's see, Ring Shout. And that was a novella. I knew it was Ring something. So anyway, those are 2. Ryoko Kui, 2, which was Delicious and Dungeon, I believe, is Ryoko Kui. Yeah. Rebecca Ross, 2, that was River Enchanted, and then A Fire Endless. And then Emily McIntyre, 2, and that was, I think, Crossed and Text. And then that's it for my most heard authors. And then either like, anyway, so I think for like anything less than 2, it's like it was either 1 or it was 2, but because we had like the other 4 for 2 here, it's like there wasn't space. But moving on, for number of books, pages, and minutes, so 71 books. I was probably going to jump up to 73. Again, I am recording this before the end of the year is up, so 71 books could pop up to 73. 17,759 pages could pop up a couple hundred pages, and then 236.58 hours. So I like kind of seeing this chart because it's like it kind of gives me like some reading patterns. We have dropped deeply in December, and that's just because what I do when I'm updating like pages and minutes is I update it weekly ish, like every 1 to 2 weeks I'll update it. I don't update it every day just because that was too taxing on my mental health when I was updating it every day, and when it would only be like a page difference, when I would only read like a page a day, then that's when it was like, okay, this is kind of pointless to change it from like 463 to 464 to 465 every single day. And it's like, okay, I'm only gonna do it once every 1 to 2 weeks based on how much I've read. So that's why December is kind of low. So, and then average rating is 4.36, and I do tend to be a little bit more generous with my ratings just because I try to find something positive to say, and I try to find something positive out of it even if I didn't really like the book. Unless it was just like an atrocious book, I usually try to find something that's kind of like the light and the dark, whether it was the writing style or the research. So yeah, I usually try to find something positive to say. 1, just to be constructive, and 2, unless it was a really atrocious book, I can usually find at least one thing to appreciate, whether it's the writing style or the structure or the setting or maybe a couple of characters. I usually try to find something positive to say. And usually I don't rate under 3 stars unless it was like I said, a really atrocious book, or unless I'm really reaching to find something positive. So that's my standard for rating, just because it's like, I feel like with most pieces of art, even if you're not particularly fond of it, like you can still find something to appreciate in it. So like my example is live action Beauty and the Beast from 2017, the Disney one. I absolutely hate that one, and I will rag on it to no end. However, I love Luke Evans and Ian McKellen, and those are the best things about that movie in my opinion. As well as Audra McDonald, her as well. Best things about that movie in my opinion. They underutilized Audra in my opinion, but like those are the only good things I can find about that. So if that was like a book, I'd probably give that like a 3 stars, because I am able to find something good about it. Ian McKellen, Luke Evans, and Audra McDonald. But yeah, I absolutely detest that, especially in comparison to the 2014 French La Belle et la Bête. Like, anyway, moving on. The next one is moods. Didn't we do, oh, we did, okay, so this was star ratings, a little bit more in detail for star ratings. So these do seem to be a little bit higher just because it is focusing on specific moods. So it's the average rating based on that specific mood, based on the books I read. So this was really interesting to look at. Challenging had the highest rating. So that's really interesting to see. And then pace, again, average ratings. Slow seems to have the best average rating, which is kind of interesting looking at. And I kind of stumbled onto these average ratings by chance. So fiction versus nonfiction. Nonfiction pulled just slightly ahead, which is kind of interesting. And then by genres, children's is highest, and so is comics. What would be under children's that I have? That I read this year. And I read The Phantom Tollbooth. Maybe The Hobbit. I'm trying to think of stuff that I would have rated 5 stars. I can't think of anything else. And then comics also pretty high, and that makes sense. Psychology, it's interesting, psychology and sociology are so high. And then so for format, print is the highest. I'm not surprised that digital is the lowest, just because that was the smallest percentage in comparison to the other two for what I read this year. And then for the last two pictures that you saw before I transitioned into this card, the last two pictures, those were owned versus unowned. So owned books, 55 that I had read. Unowned, 16 of the books that I read. Again, the owned could jump up to like 57 if and when I finish the Mademoiselle Alliance and Heaven Officials Blessing Volume 7. If I finish that by the if I finish those by the 31st, those could owned books could jump up to 57 of 73. And then unowned was 16 books. I feel like this ratio could be a little bit better. I feel like that could be a little bit better just because of trying to utilize my local library more. So I'm going to try to do a little bit better, but that's something I say all the time, and it is something I'm slowly getting better at. So yeah, we're doing okay so far. So yeah, overall doing pretty okay considering everything, and considering the year I have had, in 2025, like I did pretty good. So that is the end of this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.